was a little girl who never spoke her mind. I wouldn't rock the boat, I couldn't cross the line. But every step that I've taken, every pain, every tear has led me to the woman who's standing right here.
Please join me in prayer. I just recognize that there is a power, a presence that is in and through every living thing. I experience this presence in the eyes upon all of the lovely faces I've experienced today. I smell that presence in the wind and the change of seasons. I experience that presence through the energy of the sun and the beauty of the blue sky on this amazing fall day. Experiencing the change of season as the leaves begin to fall and make their transition to a new season, to a new time. And recognizing the experience of the divine in every living thing, I absolutely know that I am one with the source. As I know that each and every one of us in this room and listening from wherever you are, we are connected. We are one. I just know that this day is blessed, that every volunteer that gathered to make this service possible did so in the space of love and joy and great gratitude. I know that Reverend Jen speaks the divine as she is a conduit of that divine love, expressing as only she can in her space of love and humor and joy. Oh, I give great thanks for everyone who gathers today, whether it be in mosque, a synagogue, out in nature, or curled up on their sofa. For where one or more are gathered together, God is, for God is everywhere. I am so thankful. And in this gratitude, I simply release this into the action of the universal law, for I know the divine is always working, as we affirm this in one voice by saying, and so it is. The words of inspiration day is first from Seneca the Younger. It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what really matters. And Steve Maraboli, I have come to accept the bumpy roads of life. They seem to lead to the best places. And from our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes. Ultimately, we shall see that the universe rests on the shoulders of love, that God is love, and that all the errors of man are the result of ignorance of his own true nature. The happy outlook on life is always constructive. The understanding heart is filled with sympathy and helpfulness toward all. An evolved soul judges no one, condemns no one, but realizes that all are on the road of experience, seeking the same goal, and that each must ultimately find his home in heaven.
What is it like for you when you make plans? You got everything lined up. You got a list of how to be organized. Maybe you're taking a trip. You got a list of what to pack. You got a list of who to call. You got a list of all this stuff. and then something goes, and your plans change. So consider taking a trip one Sunday afternoon, early evening, up into the mountains. You just want to relax. You just want to breathe in the air. You want to look at the aspens. Because, we haven't seen them change enough. We have to go drive by and watch them change every year. And it's cool. It's beautiful. And then you notice that there is a detour on the road. And you have to take a route you hadn't planned on. And it's rocky. And it's a messed up road. And it has crevices in it. What do? Some of us say things like, well, the bike isn't going to make it across that, so we're turning around and going back. Been there, done that. Sometimes we go, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. And we get on the road, and we just kind of persevere. And then sometimes we get on that rocky road, and we can't stop talking about how rocky it is. And that can lead us to other kind of complications and challenges, can't it? So I want you to think for a moment, just do a flashback with me, just for a second, to March 2021. Many of you had supported the New Dawn community in packing up a building, loading up, what are those things called, pods, hauling all the stuff off, getting out of the building, relocating to the Radisson. We had just kind of stepped into the Radisson Hotel. The Leadership Council and a few others in the community were looking for property and places where we could call our spiritual home. And then we hit a rocky road. COVID. I remember walking off platform at the Radisson that Sunday, and the very next day, the world had come to a standstill. I had no idea what Facebook Live meant. I had no idea how to orchestrate a message on an online presence. None. And that rocky road for me kept getting a little rockier, and it lasted a long time. And I'm not sure we're past it yet. So what we want to look at today as we're in this idea of reaching higher, of striving for more, of transcending. How can we do this when things don't quite go the way we wanted them to? I absolutely hate that phrase that says, man makes plans and God laughs. And the reason I hate it is not that I don't think God has a sense of humor, but because I do absolutely know that God has a sense of humor. All we have to do is look around at people we know, and we get that. We see that right away. But that phrase and the way I've heard it sounds like God is mocking us. Yeah, just go make a plan. Yeah, just go try that. See how that's going to work. And that's not our God. That is not how it works. So I just wanted to clear that up right away. So let's take some time and consider what this is going to be like for us. Dr. Ernest Holmes says, there is an inner urge in our own minds to grow, to expand, to break down the barriers of previous limitations, and to ever widen our experience. Ever widen our experience. This persistent urge is a divine influence, an irresistible force, and constitutes the greatest impulse in the human experience. The greatest impulse in the human experience. There is an urge within us to grow. And this is how we continue to move along and reach higher and higher. So let's take a look at this morning, just for a couple minutes. I have a story to share with you. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, Delta Flight 15 was flying over the Atlantic Ocean about 5 hours outside of Frankfurt. The plane had 218 passengers. And the pilot received a message that said, effective immediately, all airways over the continental US are immediately closed. The aircraft was ordered to land as soon as possible. That was the message. That's all they knew. The pilot shared the information with the flight crew, and the flight crew started getting ready to handle possible hysteria that's going to go on in the plane when everybody realizes they're not going to Frankfurt, which is where they thought they were going. The captain reached out to Canadian Air, who was in charge of what was going on at that moment in time and based on where they were located, and said, I need a change. I need a flight plan change. Immediately, it was granted. And the captain knew something really big was going on. And the closest airport to them was Gander, Newfoundland, which was 400 miles that way. So the plane had to turn around. So it wasn't going to be something that they were going to sneak up on these passengers, was it? Because when you're on a plane going a direction and suddenly the plane is turning around, you get a sense of that. You know something's happening. No one asked any questions. Everybody just kind of did what they needed to do. Soon information came across the airways to the flight crew only that there was terrorist activity that had taken place in New York and that planes had been hijacked over the skies of America. So the flight crew decided that they needed to do something really creative. And telling the passengers at that moment in time when they only had this much information didn't seem like the right answer. So they lied. And they told all the passengers that they had to go back to Gander because the panels on the plane were not acting weird. They were all wonky. Something had to be checked out. And the passengers grumbled, as we have a tendency to do when it's not going our way. But they continued on. When they landed in Gander, approximately 40 minutes after receiving the first message, the time in Gander was 12:30 p.m., which is approximately 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, those of us who know what was going on September 11th remember very well the times of day. What was interesting is as they landed in Gander, there were 20 other planes already on the ground. And the captain of the crew, the pilot, she was very, very well versed on how passengers react. And she knew they were going to have to tell them something. So she said to the passengers, "Ladies and gentlemen, you must be wondering if all these airplanes suddenly on the ground are having the same problems we're having. And the reality is that we're all here for another reason." The explanation continued that there was very little we knew about what was going on in the United States at that moment in time. We just knew that there had been some type of an attack. And there were gasps around the plane. The Canadian government, being in charge of everything at that moment in time, was kind of communicating with the people on the plane. No one was allowed to deplane, and no one was allowed to enter an aircraft. By the time everything kind of settled down, if you want to call it that, there were 53 airplanes in the airport of Gander, Newfoundland. 27 of them were US commercial jets. So now news was coming across, people were getting in touch with radio information, and there was more things being shared. And now we knew that airplanes had flown into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. People were trying to use cell phones, but they weren't getting anywhere because they were in the wrong atmosphere and their cell phones would not work. And the ones that did work were blocked because there was too much traffic, too much going on. They stayed on that plane for a very long time because into the evening, they were told that the World Trade Center buildings had collapsed and there had been a fourth hijacking of an airplane that resulted in a crash in a field in Pennsylvania. I cannot imagine sitting on a plane for hours, knowing something tragic is happening, not having any answers, and not being able to do anything about it. At 6 p.m., the people on the plane were told that they were going to remain on the plane till 11 o'clock the next day, which at that time they would have been on that plane in that airport approximately 24 hours. Again, the passengers weren't particularly happy, but they needed to settle it down and get ready for bed. And that's exactly what they did. The next morning at 10:30 a.m., a convoy of school buses showed up and passengers were able to deplane. The crew from Delta Flight 15 was taken to a hotel. They were taken to a debriefing, and then they were taken to a hotel. The passengers went through customs and all of that process, and then they got on buses, and then they got shipped out somewhere. Because the truth was, the town and the community of Gander had a population of 10,400 people, and there were 10,500 passengers from airplanes in Gander at that moment in time. Somebody had to get really, really creative. 2 days. They were there for 2 days. So now it had been 3 full days that they had been out of that connection, that ability to reach out to family, to talk to people, to have that sense of well-being, of knowing everybody's safe. We still didn't have that. They still didn't have that at that time. They had distributed the passengers from all 53 planes all around the communities of Gander. High schools were closed, meeting halls, lodges, large facilities were converted to spaces for all of these people. All of the high school students were required to volunteer their time and take care of their guests, which were referred to as the plane people. If any women wanted to be in a women's-only facility, that was granted. For the people who were elderly, and there happened to be a woman who was quite pregnant on that plane, they were put into homes of people in the community of Lewisport. Everyone else was put in the high school and the other areas that they could place them. They were able to make phone calls and send emails once a day to the United States to stay connected. The rest of the time, the communities of Newfoundland treated them as tourists. They were taken on excursions, they were taken on boat cruises, they got to go check out the lakes and harbors, they were fed incredibly well, they were either taken to restaurants of their choice, or they had food brought into them wherever they were at. And the people were so kind. It was such an amazing experience. They were given tokens to wash their clothes because their luggage was still on the aircraft. So the only clothing they had was what they were wearing or what they were choosing to buy. When they finally brought everybody back together, the crew was on the plane, the 218 passengers began to board. What the crew said was it was night and day. The people who had gotten off that plane were all total strangers. The people who reboarded that plane sounded like they'd been on a cruise and they were the best friends on the planet. They kept sharing all of the stuff that happened to them and how people took care of them and how wonderful it was. And it was just so exciting to hear all of the things that had transpired in the midst of such a horrific tragedy all the way around the world in Newfoundland. And then something really interesting happened. A gentleman on the plane who was a passenger asked one of the flight crew if he could make an announcement from the PA system, which was not ever allowed. And he was given the microphone. And what he said was, I want to remind everyone what has happened to us individually these past few days. And I want us all to remember the hospitality we have received from these small little communities. How incredible that has been. And so what he said was he's going to set up a trust fund in the name of Delta 15, the flight number. And he's going to provide college scholarships for the high school students of the town of Lewisport, which was where they all stayed. He passed around a commitment sheet around the airplane, and within a very few minutes, they had over $14,000 raised. This man was a doctor from Virginia. He promised he would match these donations, and he would start the administrative work to get the scholarships up and running. He also said that he would forward all of this proposal information to Delta Corporate because they got to donate too. The last report that I found in my research was approximately 7 years old, and it stated that the trust fund at that moment in time held $1.5 million, and that 134 students had received scholarships and support with their college education. The passengers and the crew of Delta Flight 15 hit a rocky road, a very rocky road. And the whole world did, and the nation did. And yet, what did they create during that time frame? What did they bring forth from that trauma and that drama? And what did they take into the world going forward? This is how we want to face the rocky road. So my first point today is to have faith. They had faith. They had faith in air traffic control. Even though they didn't have all the information, they had enough faith to know that they needed to follow the commands. The flight crew had enough faith in one another to know how to act, how to behave, and how to interact with the passengers. The passengers had enough faith in the overall process, even though I'm sure some of them were slightly grumbly about what was going on. And the communities in Newfoundland had enough faith in who they were and what they could bring to the table that they knew they could support. Have faith. Dr. Ernest Holmes says, faith within anyone's reach. If someone has faith in himself, in his neighbor, in the universe, and in God, that faith will illuminate the place where he is. And by the light of that faith, he will be able to see that everything is good. When we have faith in God, the conditions around us do not change our reality. Our reality is God's got this. Well, this feels really icky right now. This is starting to look kind of scary, but oh my gosh, I know God's got this. I know God's got me. That's what we want to do. That's where we want to place ourselves when the road gets rocky. Valerie Carr says this. She talks about when the world gets me down, I turn to my friends, my family, and my faith to lift me up again and onto the sick path of Shardikala. If you remember, Valerie Carr wrote the book, See No Stranger. Shardikala. Shardikala is a process, a mental state that the sick people bring forth of optimism and joy. They are taught to be optimistic. They are taught and reminded to be joyful, no matter what, because this sign of their commitment is in alignment with what they believe to be the will of God. she continues to say this: boundless optimism, even in darkness, ever rising, high spirits, even in hardship. What would it be like if we adopted the idea of boundless optimism? What would that feel like? To know all the time, 24/7, that God's got it. God's got me. Spirit's supporting me. Yeah, that tire might look flat and I don't know what the heck to do with it, but God's got this. I had that experience a couple years ago. And before I took another breath, a car pulled right up behind me and a man jumped out and he said, "You want me to help you with that tire?" Angels of God, I call those. Boundless optimism. The rockiest roads can lead us to the highest peaks, provided we don't crash and burn in the middle of the rocky road, that we maintain that faith, that we remind ourselves that I can endure, we can endure, I can carry on, we can carry on. I can include others to be with me in the process, and I can include all of me, as we talked about last week. And I can choose love, I can transcend, and I can reach higher. So look at all of not all of them, that's too many. Look at some of the challenges you've had in your life. Consider for a moment one of those times when you just didn't think you were going to get through it. Just didn't think you were going to get through it. And look where you are today. That's the piece I want you to hold on to, because you are powerful. You can persevere. You can be creative. You can create something new because you've got God and you've got you. And that's how it works. Joshua Marine says, challenges are what make life interesting, and overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. Sometimes it gets a little too interesting, doesn't it? It's like, okay, let's calm this down for a minute, okay, Spirit? Because, I've been interested and engaged quite a bit, and I need to calm down. So we can move through this. We can move through every day. We can move through every moment. We can face the rocky road of COVID and all of the variations and all of the other stuff and all of the news and all of the things that are coming forth with that. Those of you who live in the Aurora community, we can look at the rocky road of what's going on with the Aurora Police Department. And we can know that God is in this. Because sometimes things have to get a little upsetting and a little disturbing for us to understand or help or support moving into something better, greater, and more meaningful. Each one of us has the ability to rise again. Maya Angelou says, just like the moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. That's what I want you to leave with today. Still I rise. Still we rise. There may be fewer of us in this room today than there were 2 years ago, but still we rise. And it's like the others went anywhere. Some of them aren't comfortable getting out into the public. Some of them are traveling. Some of them, there's all kinds of things going on. But we are going to maintain this space and this place and hold the container for the New Dawn community of Aurora to come here and meet until we have a physical location in Aurora. And we will continue on. And we will reach higher, and we will rise. Please pray with me. Practitioners, please stand. So breathing into this space, into this moment, into the right here, right now, I know that there is a power There is a power that is greater than anything I have ever imagined or ever considered. There is a power that goes beyond any limitation that we can think of. There is a power that is so creative, so robust, so supportive that it can take us to any place we want to be in our expression of life. I call this power God. I hold that space in my heart, that very knowing that God is within me, God is within each and every one of us. And knowing that if the road is rocky today, or if it's rocky in a few days, that Spirit is right here, supporting, holding, guiding, loving the entire time as we move through the process, as we move through whatever condition is showing up. How good that feels, how blessed that is to know that we have this to tap into. And so what I know right here and right now is that Spirit is perfect. Spirit is divine. All is well, and all is blessed. And all people everywhere are blessed by God, in God, and as God. And as we leave here today, we do so with that inner knowing, that sense of energetic relief and release that we can accomplish, and we can let go of the things that we do not need to hold on to. And we can simply breathe in the good, the great, and the perfect of the now. So I turn this over to the law of mind. I turn this over and release it into the law of mind, where already Spirit has said yes. Already universal wisdom has it in the process of being made manifest for each and every one of us and everyone in the virtual world who hears this message. It's perfect, it's good, and by God, it is already done. And so we say together, and so it is.
I was a little girl who never spoke her mind. I wouldn't rock the boat, I couldn't cross the line. But every step that I've taken, every pain, every tear, has led me to the woman who's standing right here.
Hello, I'm Reverend Jen Wild, Senior Minister for New Dawn Center for Spiritual Living. New Dawn Center is a global community, and we welcome all people, all paths, all ways of thinking, all philosophies. So know that you are welcome here, and thank you for joining our online community.